All right. Thank you so much for joining us. We're so excited to have Rima Vesely-Flad tonight to celebrate the fire inside, the Dharma of James Baldwin and Audre Lorde. It's an unapologetically Black, queer, feminist, and Buddhist book that casts a new light on the radical literary legacies of James Baldwin and Audre Lorde. Tonight, Rima will be in conversation with Lama Rod Owens, a Black Buddhist Southern queen, an international influencer with over 11 years of experience and a Master's of Divinity degree in Buddhist Studies from Harvard Divinity School, a leading voice featured by various national and international news outlets, and author of The New Saints, From Broken Hearts to Spiritual Warriors, Love and Rage, The Path of Liberation Through Anger, and co-author of Radical Dharma, Talking Race, Love, and Liberation. His teachings center on freedom, self-expression, and radical self-care. Thank you for joining us. And Rima Vesely-Flad is the author of Black Buddhist and the Black Radical Tradition, The Practice of Stillness and the Movement for Liberation, and Racial Purity and Dangerous Bodies, Moral Pollution, Black Lives, and the Struggle for Justice. She is the founder of the Initiative for Black Buddhist Studies and the recipient of grants from the Fetzer Institute, the Henry J. Luce Foundation, the Frederick P. Lenz Foundation, the Crossroads Program, and the Fulbright Program. A couple of housekeeping things before we get started. I want to give a shout out to our partner for the evening, Zami Nobla. They're the leading advocacy organization dedicated to empowering Black lesbians over 40. Thanks for joining us. And we'll have time after their conversation for Q&A, so keep your questions in mind. And if you're joining us virtually, drop your questions in the chat and I'll read them aloud. We have books for sale up front, so keep in mind buying your book from us allows us to keep putting on free events like this. And that's all from me. Thanks for joining us. Over to y'all.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And to Lama Rod.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm over-prepared.
Sound like an academic.
I take this seriously, okay? Thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this conversation. And this is, I don't want to get, I know you have something to start with, but I just want to uplift Rima as well for the work that you do to take care of our community, the Black Buddhist community, and the ways that you're cataloging our history and our development, and putting us in conversation with a larger tradition of Black radical work and thinking and writing, right? I think it's so important what you're doing, and it's so important how you've offered this text to us as well. Right, to really center the real liberatory work and the spiritual, mental liberatory work of these two great writers and thinkers that have deeply shaped all of us and continue to shape all of us. So deep gratitude for this labor.
Thank you, Lama Rod. I said when I entered and saw Lama Rod, who I just saw 2 months ago, approximately in Asheville, where I live, that in so many ways, Love and Rage was a primary inspiration for this book. Lama Rod quotes Audre Lorde 3 times and quotes James Baldwin 3 times, and I have them all tabbed in my annotations and really paid attention to who inspires you and so many members of our community. And there are other writers who I think do similarly illuminate Buddhist doctrine in beautiful and eloquent ways. But in our Black Buddhist community, Baldwin and Lorde are primary, are very, very apparent. So you are an inspiration for this project.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. It's not a day that goes by when I'm not thinking about or quoting, Audre Lorde or James Baldwin, right? Because they live in me, as all the great thinkers and writers in the community do, right? I just think that it's so important that we remember our elders and we remember our great change makers, because especially now in this moment of real systemic collapse, right? Their work reminds us of the price of what it takes to really get free, right? And I think that this is important, in this moment also, because so much of how this country understands liberation is deeply rooted in Black liberation work and the Black prophetic tradition, right? As our dear colleague and elder Cornel West is always talking about, the Black, who taught me about the Black prophetic tradition, right? And I hold that really deeply, as well. And the Black prophetic tradition is this, you continue this work and this tradition as well. You have a quote. You want,
Yes, I don't want to. Actually, it responds to what you're saying, because some of what I think about with the Black prophetic tradition is that the work is not just outward facing. Yes. It's not just moral critique. It's not just pointing at our society and saying we have to change conditions. It's also looking inward. It's also taking account of our psychological distress, of our intergenerational trauma, and saying healing is central to this work of liberation. So that's what I think about with the Black prophetic tradition. And actually, I do want to read a quote. So as much as Lama Rod was an inspiration for this book, so too this particular quote from Baldwin. This is from The Fire Next Time, pages 98 and 99, just in case you're taking notes. It's worth writing this down. So I'm actually, if you have this book, The Fire Inside, I'm on page 50. And so what Baldwin says is, people who cannot suffer can never grow up, can never discover who they are. That man who's forced each day to snatch his manhood, his identity, out of the fire of human cruelty that rages to destroy it, knows something about himself and human life that no school on earth, and indeed no church, can teach. He achieves his own authority, and that is unshakable. This is because in order to save his own life, he is forced to look beneath appearances, to take nothing for granted, to hear the meaning behind the words. If one is continually surviving the worst that life can bring, one eventually ceases to be controlled by a fear of what life can bring. Whatever it brings must be borne. And I find that to be so powerful and frankly so Buddhist on multiple levels, because he's saying that people who cannot suffer can never grow up. But he's also saying we can learn to suffer skillfully, that we actually possess that capacity. And I also appreciate this emphasis on inner authority, that if we can walk through our suffering, if we can face it, that we achieve a kind of unshakable authority. And that in facing our suffering, we cease to be afraid of our suffering. In learning how to bear, and this is something Audre Lorde talks about a lot as well, bearing suffering. It's not being a doormat. It's actually having the courage to turn towards our suffering. And Baldwin's language of not being controlled, of attaining that unshakable authority, that has stayed with me in the way that you have talked about these words staying with you.
And it's this Dharma, like it's straightforward Dharma. Like there's no liberation without first telling the truth.
Oh, yes. I've been listening to you on Instagram. Oh. You've been talking about
I know. It's the same propaganda, so I'm not changing it up to none. But no, it's like when I read this and when I read Baldwin and Audre Lorde too, but particularly Baldwin was always about telling the truth.
Yes.
And it felt like very intense labor. Right? Like the brokenheartedness, which is the word I always use, but the reality of struggle and love, right, has to begin with telling the truth. And his critique of America was always this surfacing of lies, like America is just a lie.
Yes.
That we haven't learned how to get beneath.
Yes.
Right.
That indictment of evasion, of avoidance, repression. Yes.
and how that avoidance, like, or as Baldwin is kind of lifting in this quote, this refusal to grow up is what keeps the cycle of lying going, which is just the cycle of systemic harm.
Yes.
Going and going and going. And I think what we're facing now is a lot of people growing up like very quickly, very intensely, like overnight, right? And the thing that always really touched me about Baldwin is the gentleness, right? That he would offer to the work of telling the truth and being with the suffering. You know, there was always a centering of real love and care, no matter how intense the truth was.
Yes. I think you're right. He operated out of love and also felt that if we couldn't tell the truth, that we weren't also then loving. Yeah. We were taking on a kind of avoidance. But I think you're right. I mean, he talks very poignantly about love. He uses that word. He claims that even when he was full of rage, it came from a place of love.
Like the way that he held love and rage together, right? And I think that, and this is the same, I think, for Audre Lorde as well, but the ways that his deep ethic of love really put him into really close relationship with Dr. King and Malcolm X and Medgar Evers and so many the great thinkers and writers of his generation, right? And I also think about how his ethic of love also created tension.
Oh, say more about that.
Well, I think about Richard Wright.
And the critique of Richard Wright.
Yeah, you know, in everyone's protest novel, you know, when everyone moved to Paris, which is a very lovely idea right now. You know, everyone after the war, World War II, everyone was going to Paris, you know, because it was a place of freedom for a lot of writers, especially, well, artists in general, especially, you know, Black artists. You know, of course, Richard Wright was James Baldwin's mentor in New York in his, you know, late teens, I would say early 20s, in the 40s. And of course, Richard Wright was at that time probably the most prominent Black writer in the world, like with A Native Son, Black Boy, and so forth. And what Baldwin did as a young writer in Paris, and Richard Wright was in Paris as well, so they were recreating community. James Baldwin was like, listen, like, you're not doing enough in your work. Like, you're getting stuck.
It's a caricature.
It's a caricature of Black men. Yes. And in Everyone's Protest novel, which was one of his earlier essays in Paris, he's like, well, you know, Richard Wright is just a descendant of Harriet Beecher Stowe and Uncle Tom's Cabin. And that lit people up.
It lit Richard Wright up.
And Richard Wright, you know, was like, listen, I'm not going to stand for this. But because he did that, he found his voice. But I mentioned that story because he really fell into a real ethic of love. And he was just like, no, I want to talk about how we transcend the rage, the anger, the otherness.
Yeah. And we're not solely shaped by our conditions. We have agency. Yes. We're not simply people who absorb the hatred and that's all there is, that we can work through it, that we are more than what comes at us. That we have the capacity to love despite it all. Exactly,
right. And I think that created some tension, you know, not just his ethic of love, but also his sexuality, you know, created a lot of tension, you know, and particularly in the Black writing community, in the Black arts community, right? But he stayed with that ethic. And I think that's why maybe he didn't get the kind of recognition that he didn't get in his life, right? And I think that's why so many Black writers rallied around Toni Morrison.
Well, that's a very interesting analysis. I hadn't thought of it.
Yeah, that is a message of real deep healing.
Yes.
That we are here on purpose, that we're divine. Right. You know, and so you come into the tradition and you imagine yourself to be Tara, the female Buddha of compassion, or, you know, Chenrezig, the Bodhisattva of love. And that starts to heal the ways in which anti-Blackness has deeply depleted us, right? But that's a big part of the Black prophetic tradition, right? It's the liberatory imagination. I think about Claudia Rankine as well. She talks about freeing the imagination, right? And I think that Audre Lorde was doing that.
For sure.
Like, she was freeing the ways in which anti-Blackness and misogynoir really was creating these limitations.
Yes.
And she was like, I will be the mother, right?
Yes.
I will be Yamaya, I will be Oshun, right? I will reclaim my sacredness.
Yes.
Right. And I felt like that was a real profound healing that you could feel in her work, opposed to Baldwin, who I felt always carried the burden, the weight of unresolved trauma, And so, yes, what he was saying is really beautiful, but it didn't lift into this kind of fluidity.
It's true. I hear what you're saying, because in a certain way, in putting these two into conversation, Baldwin clarified so much. I had grown up in this white family that hated me, and Baldwin said, there's no Black problem, there's a white problem. And I was like, thank you. Deep bows. And it's true, like, Baldwin had this extraordinary analysis, but it's also the case that for me personally, when I looked for a way forward, I heard Audre Lorde.
Yes. Same for me.
Oh, very interesting.
There's not, I quote Audre Lorde in all of my books, particularly her work around, self-care is not self-indulgence, is political warfare, which comes from the cancer journals. It was the wisdom that she was getting as she was facing like impermanence. And for me, that quote, that writing, like, it has shaped so much of how I've learned to care for myself and how I justify that care as work of political warfare. Right. And it's deeply rooted in Black ancestral wisdom as well, because we know that systems are trying to wear us down and wear us out. ICE is trying to wear us out. Trump is trying to wear us out. And we have to survive by actually embodying a real ethic of care.
Yes.
Community care, communal care.
Yes.
Like, we just can't just get run down. Right. And I think for Audre Lorde, she knew that and understood that. And I think in certain ways had more access to that because she was a parent. She was a partner. Like, she was pretty secure. She was educated. Like, it was a different life than Baldwin.
She had a professional job.
She has a professional job. She has a steady income.
Right.
Like that creates a lot of stability for care when you have steady resources. And Baldwin was always, it felt like one paycheck, living hand to mouth sometimes. And he never really, even though maybe you can argue this, but like, I don't think he really found the kind of love that he deserves. A really kind of steady, rooted, transformative relationship, And I would encourage you also to read his new biography, Love Letters, which talks about like his, the love, like how love and eroticism and romance were a part of his life, and really a lot of the suffering that came from that. But again, going back to Audre Lorde, right? There was such an ethic of care. Yeah. Right.
And she had to. She was diagnosed with breast cancer at a very young age. She really had to face her mortality. The fact that we all will at some point pass, but for her, she had young children. She was in the prime of her life, and all of a sudden she was confronted. And that, it was, I would say, revolutionary for her. And we get the ups and downs, the changing mind, the inner landscape. I have so much gratitude for her willingness. And it was also, of course, very political, but her willingness to really turn inward and then let us all in as well.
I have a question along these same lines, and it's more personal, but so we're talking about care. We're talking about how Audre Lorde has taught us to care for ourselves. And as you read this text, this is intense emotional labor. And I every book I write is emotional labor. Like, it's just like, I'm going to tell you everything and it's going to hurt like hell, but I go back to what Baldwin, would write about, when he would say, listen, if it hurt you, it hurt me first. I trust that. Like, I trust that there's an agreement that I make with an author and a writer. Like, if this is moving me, I have to trust that it moved that writer first, so I don't feel so alone. So as I read through your work, and I read through your relationship with your grandparents and your mother and your father, like the absence of your father for you and your brother, and writing these stories, how did you take care of yourself in this writing? How did you resource yourself?
I sit pretty much every day.
Yeah.
I mean, and having a long-standing practice, really taking refuge day in, day out is very central. And there's been enough practice over this length of time to be able to just know, like, my immune system's depleted, I have to slow down. I have some capacity at this point. And I'll just actually say a little bit about the writing process. I'm trained, as you know, as an academic, and have written these academic books. And I wrote, actually, the first version I sent you was an academic version, saying, like, this is what Baldwin and Lorde have to say about Buddhism. This is what I hear. And then it was actually Ruth King who read the academic version, and wrote me an email and said, we have to talk tomorrow. And I said, okay. I was a bit overwhelmed.
It sounds like Ruth.
Yes, be immediate. And I said, okay. And I'm so grateful, because she said, Rima, we have to have your practice in this book. She said, you can tell us these things, but we need to know what's true for you. And she said some other things, which I won't repeat, but that was the gist of it. I mean, Ruth can be she's a very strong voice. But in all the best
An elder
ways,
intense.
Yes. I mean, she really took me seriously. James Cone sat on my dissertation committee. Same thing, just the sledgehammer, but in all with love, and just pushed me forward. And that's what Ruth did too.
Yeah.
It was very powerful for me.
Well, that's eldership.
And so, yes, mentorship, teacher, like these are real teachers. And so anyway, I heard that. I went back to my publisher, North Atlantic Books, and I said, I need another month. I have to get a writing coach, because I have to figure out how to do this. And I had never done it. And it was really hard. But I had already been in touch with a Zen teacher who's a writing coach. Her name is Vesely-Flad. She lives in Panama. So most of it was, maybe all of it was online, but steady. And day after day, over a month, it essentially became a set of notes and rewrote the entire manuscript with my practice as the center. And the chapter actually on Gaza didn't really change. And it was the very last chapter. And she read that as the last chapter and said, this is the model. I can hear you wrestling. I can hear how you use Baldwin and Lorde in your own life. And she said, you can do this. And so basically then added, but I wouldn't say I would say centered my practice. And it was very hard. I mean, I do feel in a deep way that a part of my gut response to these two writers is that they both felt hated within their families. And they spoke and wrote about that so poignantly. And even though it wasn't exactly the same situation, that was also my story. And so I could, in a deep way, feel what they were going through and hear them as my teachers. And in a certain way, because they used their lives to talk about these larger truths, I felt called forward by both of them. Like, I can do this too. The story around my father is in a certain way a different story and somewhat of a healing story. So I actually, because I was writing, I decided to give myself permission to hire a private investigator. And so for those of you who haven't read the book, I'll just say, the narrative with my father is that he left when I was 7 and just didn't come back. And that lack of presence was such an absence, which is what I talk about in direct ways. And so much so that I actually didn't know his mother's name. I knew his father's name because he was Walter Green Jr., but I didn't know his mother's name. And there was a point at which it was actually doing a retreat called Deep Time Liberation, which is a retreat. Yes, it's a retreat. It's for people of African descent, and it's a group of Black Buddhist teachers who are authorized in their lineages, and they take groups of about 15 people to a plantation and do various practices, including somatic practices, pouring libations, drumming, lots of drumming, really very powerful. And so the retreat starts off with providing photos of ancestors, your own ancestors. And I didn't have any photos. I didn't even have a name. I didn't know anything. And that hit me in a different way. So actually the photos I gave were of James Baldwin and Audre Lorde as my spiritual ancestors, but who were my people? I didn't know. So actually I did pay some money. I hired a private investigator. I had done my DNA. I didn't have any first cousins, but I had 2 second cousins, and I shared about 4% DNA. And one of them responded right away. And this is the story. I'm actually this is such a beautiful story. So I was actually on retreat. It was maybe an 8-night retreat. And the private investigator reached out while I was on retreat. And this one cousin with whom I share about 4% DNA actually had the Black Buddhist book on her bookshelf because she was a practicing Buddhist and she knew who I was. It was extraordinary. The private investigator said my name and she said, "The Rima?" Which of course I'm not even close to being a household name, but I thought that was amazing. And then suddenly I have hundreds of cousins. So I went to visit, this is family in Iowa, but there's family everywhere, probably in every state. I've been able to get to know people. My great aunt, the matriarch of my family, just turned 100.
And this is your father's side.
This is my father. This is all my father's people. And I dedicate this book actually to my great grandparents and to my grandmother, whose name I now know, whose name is Lucille Light. I really love that. So in a certain way, writing this did give me permission to not only take on the hatred of my mother's family, but also to embark upon a journey. And who knew what would happen, but a journey of discovery and connection
and healing
and deep healing. And, just to be claimed. The same cousin reached out to me yesterday. The book had just arrived. She was so excited. I said, "Look at the dedication." And she's in the acknowledgments. Look at the acknowledgments. And it was just so lovely. She said, "Yes, family." The first time ever being claimed by family.
Oh, wow.
It's very powerful.
Wow. That last expression, being claimed by family, it really reminds me of something that Joy DeGruy, Dr. Joy DeGruy talked about. The
I
author.
thank her. Yeah.
Oh, me too. I mean, that's another one I'm always thinking about in conversation with. So Dr. DeGruy wrote Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. Go ahead and pick that up.
Yeah.
Is it here? Y'all have it here? Okay, yeah, we should get it. It's a Bible for some of us doing real trauma work and informed trauma work. But she talks about returning back to Africa and being welcomed back and having this experience where a group of women were like, "You've been found," or "You're back," or something. It was a sentiment that was so deeply moving for her.
Yeah.
You've come back. And for us to return home is such a big part of our practice.
Yeah.
Dharma for me is about returning home.
Yes.
Right.
For you, is it taking refuge? Do you think of those? Do you think of that in the same way? Homecoming, because you write a lot about homecoming.
Right.
It's a big part of the way you talk about your practice.
Yeah, it really is. It's, for me, taking refuge, is about remembering that I am being held always.
Yeah.
Being cared for, being tended to. So it's not like I'm going and just like developing this devotion for like the Buddha or the Sangha and so forth. It's more like I'm remembering that I've always been here. Right. And I think for a lot of Black folks, particularly Black Buddhists, we have that need for home.
I think that's right.
To be reminded that we don't have to be back on the motherland to be home. Like, this is home now. And how do we understand that?
Yeah.
I've been thinking a lot about this idea of Black Dharma and Black Buddhism, and you're at the forefront of this thinking.
I would love to hear your just thoughts about that term, but yes, tell me.
I want your thoughts. We're in this. I've been paying attention to some online rhetoric about Black liberation, and particularly Black liberation in terms of Buddhism and Dharma. Black Buddhists, tend to be not erased, but we're not seen fully yet, and I think that what's happening is a real emergence of Black Dharma with certain characteristics like ancestry, returning home, but also this value of telling the truth about our history and how we came to be here. Right. And so the Dharma that I see emerging for us is a Dharma that's so in line with what Audre Lorde and James Baldwin, spent their lives doing, which was like actually helping us to tend to the suffering, but also find the transcendence, that our naming our suffering isn't about necessarily getting stuck there.
Yeah.
But it's doing what the Buddha taught, was like, you have to tell the truth first, that there is suffering before you get to the liberation. You can't bypass the suffering. Right. And I see so much of the bypassing happening, I would say, in general, convert Buddhist communities, white majority convert communities. Like, let's bypass the truth of suffering and get to the liberation, which is just an extension of white supremacy domination, and subjugation. Right. So where's my question at? I had a question.
Well, I wanted to know your thoughts. This is great.
Tricked me into getting my thoughts out. Like, how do you see a Black Buddhism or a Black Dharma emerging? And what's different?
Yeah.
What are the different aesthetics?
Well, okay. I hesitate with the term Black Buddhism primarily because we practice in lineages.
Sure.
And so at the same time, people I highly, highly respect use that term. And I'm also really paying attention to what they're saying. So people like the Mulasara, for example, like wrote an article in Lion's Roar, and I think they are extraordinary. So I'm a little bit on the fence, but I have used it once in a talk, and now, sometimes I think I regret it. The talk is actually called "The Emergence of Black Buddhism in the United States." So not totally sure about that title. In any case, when I researched Black Buddhists, and of course you are prominently featured, Black Buddhists and the Black radical tradition, there were these 4 ways of practicing that did come across as very distinct. And that is all through field work. Actually, I guess one argument I make is my own analysis, but I never asked a question about intergenerational trauma, but more than 50% of my interviewees talked about embracing this practice to heal from intergenerational trauma. So that was amazing. I didn't really ask about ancestors. And yet, actually, you are in this chapter quite a lot, but so many people talked about honoring ancestors, honoring the land. Also, our bodies, the way in which we work with our bodies in these practices. I think the somatic, but it's more than somatic practices. It's reclaiming Blackness. It's saying our bodies are vehicles. They are paths to liberation. This body, which is dark-skinned, which has been denigrated, labeled inferior, is actually the source of my liberation. It's how I move there. And there's something to deeply value just in the way I appear in the world. So I heard that come through. And then my own argument, my own take on all of this is actually very consistent with the Black radical tradition, because there is such an emphasis on psychological liberation. And what I hear teachers like you and so many others saying is, this is actually how we live into that psychological liberation. So that's what I would say. If we were to say there's a Black Buddhism, that's, I think, what it points to. And yet, at the same time, that psychological liberation is not inseparable from political liberation. It's all together. And that is different from the convert Buddhism you're pointing to.
It's the inseparability. Like, we don't have the privilege to separate our lives.
That's right.
You know, it's like we come to Dharma because we're in a political social context that's at the root of our struggle. Like, we are not free. Right. And so when I heard about Buddhism and Dharma, I was like, oh, the Buddhists are talking freedom. So let me head over here, and see it. And then I get over it and I just kind of remix everything, But, I don't, honestly, I don't sit around and think about Black Dharma, Black Buddhism. Right. I don't think we didn't do that work in Radical Dharma either. It was just like, no, I'm just going to be. Like, I'm just going to be, I'm going to practice in my intersectionality, and wherever comes from that. So be it Black, be it whatever. But I mean, at the end of the day, I don't want to get all lives matter, but it's like the Dharma is the Dharma, right? Regardless, it's about acknowledging the suffering and then moving towards the liberation from suffering. Right. And we have to start where we're at.
And that embodied practice, that claiming of the body, that is also our source of joy, which I know you also teach a lot about. But yes, acknowledging suffering and also tapping into our deeper energies, tapping into that erotic energy. The way that James Baldwin talks about, he says, this isn't like lusting after people. He said it's about being present, breaking bread, just showing up. That is sensuality. Said white Americans are totally terrified, but this is what we can do. This is lifeblood. And I do feel like Black Buddhists, the way we sing the spirituals together and dance together and drum together, and that's so consistent with our gatherings.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, I was just talking about the Black Buddhist gathering in 2019.
Oh, yes.
The gathering that seemed to go on and on and on.
It was a long time.
It was a long time, but we're all together. And it was this is turning into, for me, it felt like a homecoming.
Oh.
It was this is like a family reunion.
Yeah.
But it's a family reunion with the aunts and the uncles that you never see, but you are obsessed with. And all of a sudden you're sitting next to them in the Dharma hall, and I was like, guys, this is what we need more of. I think this is a part of a Black Dharma, is how we gather, and we gather in joy. Not in silence. We weren't in silence. We were making a lot of noise, but I was longing for some silence. I think I was we have to simmer this down,
I got like that.
I think everyone did.
We're all introverts.
But I want to get into Q&A in just 2 minutes. We have a few more minutes. One last thing that I think is really important to bring up is your treatment of Palestine, because there's so much silence in the Buddhist community. Right. Quite frankly, there's a lot of Zionism, and part of my theory is that a lot of teachers are Jewish too, and a lot of our pioneer teachers, really influential teachers.
Certainly in my lineage.
And also in my lineage, Okay. And I think there's a lot of hesitancy and a lot of ambiguity. And I really appreciated how early in the book you really went into that, you know, and so I just think it's needed. Like, what was your process around really articulating Palestine? And
oh my goodness, I think I wrote 20 drafts of that chapter. It was, but I was in it. There was no escaping the suffering. We were all witnessing. There was no possibility of avoidance. And the fact that these big centers where I had spent time and had felt safe and had let myself cry, put out statements saying everybody suffers, and I just thought, no. So in that chapter, I was listening to the audio version of the book on the way here, and in that chapter, what I grapple with is the fact that a cutting edge, a growing edge of our Buddhist communities, I'll say broadly speaking, certainly true in my lineage, which is insight, is an analysis of power, a naming of power, a recognition of power, like ICE now in Minnesota, the sheer violence that has to be taken into account as a source of suffering we cannot avoid. But at the time, it was Gaza. And then I just 2 months ago, give or take, 2.5 months ago, came back from the West Bank. Actually, one of my friends was here. Juliet. But yes, there was just so much. And the question really for me in that chapter was how to not hate people who supported the state of Israel as a nation state. I was grappling with my hatred, and it was really deep, and it was very present. And that's deep practice for me. I have capacity to hate.
We all do.
And I was really in touch with that. Really deep hatred. I'm still breathing through it. It's still going on. It hasn't ended. I mean, this is not over. And the silencing in my lineage, like meditators being told that you can't wear the keffiyeh in the meditation hall, teachers being told they can't talk about the genocide, the displacement. I mean, it's oh yes. It is there. I mean,
one of get into it. I can't. It's not my show.
Actually, there is a group, it's multi-lineage, that's meeting now. Like some very powerful voices, some very high-profile teachers. It's not everywhere, for sure. Thanissara, yes, who has a very, very powerful Substack and is writing prolifically. Yes. Thanissara, Bhikkhu Bodhi is speaking out. There are a number of people, they're speaking, they're writing. So it's not everywhere. And Thanissara is actually also in my lineage. So certainly it's not across the board in my lineage.
But it's rare. It's still.
But she's one of the few. It's true. So I do think that the practice is in many ways like learning how to acknowledge, to give oxygen to that rage and that hatred, but also find skillful ways so that it doesn't become harmful. It's not, can I have a conversation with somebody who embraces political Zionism? It's how do I work skillfully with such rage and such hatred? And what is my particular work? And actually, one of the projects that's emerging, which I'm very committed to at all cost, frankly, is what's called a Palestinian Dharma. That is a phrase that comes from a friend of mine. It's not my language, but yes, I'm right there. Actually, just the day the book came out, I was on Zoom at 9 a.m. having that conversation, and it was amazing. And that is my work. That is something I do feel.
And I think that Black Buddhists are particularly positioned to hold that space as occupied people, right? Who have to do a lot of work to hold our rage. Right. And even Baldwin pointed this out. It's like Black people would have already lost it if it wasn't for, our love and our care. Like he was surprised right? And I think we have a lot to share and a lot to offer because of how we come into Dharma, you know, to tend to our intergenerational trauma and historical trauma.
I think you're right. I mean, I think there's that tending and a kind of longevity, generations of learning how to survive and finding some mirroring. I mean, what's happening is on a different scale in a different place, a very different cultural context. And there is so much that is mirrored. And I think there are ways to learn from and to teach each other. And something I say about having just come back from the West Bank is I found my teachers. What's the question? You know, and they said steadfastness, samud, this Arabic word for steadfastness. And I came back, how do we survive this administration? You know, we're being attacked on every level. And I thought, Palestinians in the West Bank, samud. Like I had actually an answer coming back for our own reality. And also, you're right. I mean, think about my great-grandparents, my great-grandfather in rural Mississippi, you know, and he was an organizer. He was a pastor and he survived rural Mississippi in the late 1800s and early 1900s. That is not small.
And this is where my family's from. Here, you know, south of here, north of here. Atlanta's like the middle, right? You know, and you remember the history. Like you remember that your people survived this intense violence on this land that we're sitting on right now, you know, which by the way is the ancestral lands of the Creek and the Skokie and Cherokee communities, right? And Civil War land, plantation land, right? It's all of that. Right. And then there's still survival, there's still indigenous survival, there's still, you know, Black survival, there's still survival, so many margins, much wisdom. And I think that's why we have to stay in struggling. In movement.
Black radicalism is international.
It really is.
And I think that is also some of the power of it.
And well, I'm going to open up to questions now, just for a couple of questions. But I'll just say this really quick story. I was in Kathmandu like maybe 15 years ago. And it was right after I finished 3-year retreat. And I'm still enrobed. You know, so I was in my maroon dress, you know, in my shaved head. And I'm like in Kathmandu in Nepal, Black man in Kathmandu, Nepal. Like, you know, Black people were there. I met another Black American who I became really good friends with, but like it was no other Black man. So I'm walking around the Great Stupa, which is, you know, one of the great, you know, sites, you know, in Kathmandu. And a monk, Tibetan monks came up to me. They were like, "We are so happy to see you. Like, we're so happy to see Black people doing this, you know." And you begin to understand that, like, they knew Malcolm X. They were studying Black radical traditions. They were studying Dr. King. You know, they were more on the Black power side, you know, but they were like, no, we know what Black people have done, and we're studying that. So I was kind of a celebrity. You know, I'm a Buddhist and a follower of you know, a Black Power movement, you know. But I want to open up the space for questions. Any questions?
We can get us started with a question online. Sandra asked, what can Baldwin and Lorde teach us about how we can resist the current poly-crisis sustainably? Palestine, ICE, Trump, etc. How do we fight without losing hope? And I feel like y'all are already speaking towards that.
It's just sinking.
Well, my answer, having just come back from Palestine, is that steadfastness. And in a certain way, I think before going and seeing what occupation is really like day in, day out, the checkpoints, I mean, the incredible daily violence. It's like nothing I have ever witnessed or experienced. It's what our ancestors experienced, but it is happening in real time all the time. it is now more like what's happening in Minnesota. I think we in this country have a much more present experience of occupation because Minneapolis is under occupation. But that message of Samud is very powerful. And also we heard over and over, existence is resistance. Existence is resistance. And I think it's important, some of what we were talking about, we're like when Black people are only seen as, these moral authority figures who turn outward and, critique the social structure. We don't get to be multidimensional. We don't get to just exist on our own terms. Actually, I want to say out loud, Lama Rod, I quote you a lot when I'm kind of in and out of various spaces. And it's because when I interviewed you twice for the Black Buddhists book, there was a message you gave. I've been doing this work with Yogacara Buddhism, and I hear it as well, but it's that we don't just exist in resistance to white supremacy. Yes. We're not just about whatever the waters we swim in are handing our way or feeding us. We exist on our own terms. Yes. We don't have to be in opposition all the time. And in fact, with the deep practice, we are not. We actually don't even have to interface with all of that. And while I never, ever want to dismiss or reduce the level of suffering that I witnessed, as a foreigner who could actually move freely with a passport, which is not the existence of Palestinians. Do you think there's something about having a language, having food, having these very, very vast family structures and interactions? It's not just in resistance to occupation. And that, I think, that intactness, like there's something so deeply intact. It's like having a nervous system that can operate, having an immune system that can fend off whatever is coming at it or us. I think there is so much to learn. Like a lot of this work of resisting the administration, resisting ICE, these militarized forces, a lot of that work is strengthening our own immune systems and our nervous systems. It's not just being in constant opposition or reaction to, it's also the self-care you named.
Yes.
So that's as much a part of this stage of survival as getting ICE out of our cities, dismantling these structures.
Selective care is the lesson. And I think, when Trump was reelected, the conversations I was having in my family was like, we know how to do this.
Yes, we've been through this.
We've been through
this. This is not new.
This isn't, so we know how to organize. We know how to take care of ourselves. We know how to round up folks and protect them. Like we know how to do this, right? So we don't need a lesson on collective care. I think white folks need a lesson on collective care. Like instead of me, what does it mean to be us? Right? And how do we start divesting from the identities and the locations that perpetuate this? So that means it's going to be a real kind of dying, and I think that it's going to be up to Indigenous, Black, and other brown communities to caretake that dying, and as Whitney Houston said, it's not right, but it's okay. Right? Like liberation work isn't fair. Like it's not fair, right? But it has to be okay. Like I just have to do it, right? I know we have more questions too. If there is any question in the space, sure.
I love this distinction that you all made here between Baldwin and Lorde, and how Lorde is able to bring a regenerativeness to the rage that she lives through, versus Baldwin's angry and stays that way. And I'm curious to hear kind of what lessons do you find in Lorde about that kind of regenerativeness and how seeing differences as a place of growth. How do you see that and apply that to today?
Seeing differences as a means for growth. So two things come to mind very immediately, and also interested in Lama Rod's thoughts on this. But the two things are, one, that for Audre Lorde, everything was meant to be used. Nothing was ever wasted. Every interaction, every experience of anger and hatred, everything was meant to serve growth. And she's very explicit about this. And the other thing, and this is also a part of that regeneration, is that she talks so much about dreaming. And she has this essay, I'm going to forget the title, but it's in Sister Outsider. It's one of the essays she also, like alongside Eye to Eye, said was her most important essay. And in that essay, she starts off talking about dreams. And it's so beautiful. I mean, that language comes up again and again and again. And I think, too, the imagination, dreaming, allowing ourselves to envision something else. Something I talk about in the book is the fact that she was legally blind. And she didn't speak until the age of 4. And then when she did speak, she spoke in poems. And yet you could say these were, disabilities, or even in the language of like the parenting world, developmental delays. But for Audre Lorde, it's like, all of that served this vision. And it was such an enormous vision. I mean, it's so vast and all encompassing. I mean, she could imagine herself as a deity and really live into that. And, take down power structures and analyze and challenge the women's, the feminist movement. The white feminist world was so highly racist, and she operated within it. And then would also say these, I think, extraordinary things like, and if my heel is on another woman's face, tell me. I don't want to oppress anybody else. But she was not going to stay silent. Our silence will not protect us.
Yeah, powerful.
So, very powerful. That's what called me out in speaking about the genocide, frankly. Your silence will not protect you.
I would say, like, for Baldwin, I think he resigned himself to the hopelessness. Like, he was like, yeah, this is what should happen, but it's not going to happen, right? And I think that's a way that he learned to live with that truth. And I would like to say, yeah, it didn't overcome him, but I think it really contributed to a lot of, like, his mental and physical struggle towards the end of his life. Like, he didn't know how to really hold the heartbreak, the weight of everything. And I think that's what that can happen to visionaries, to prophets. It's the weight of the work can be crushing, right? And I think this is why Dharma in Buddhism is so important. Like, it helps us to hold and negotiate the truth of things, the heaviness of the truth, and balancing it with the ultimate truth of things, which is that we're already free. Right. I think Baldwin really needed that. And I think Audre Lorde found that. She found that freedom, that fluidity, So
I want to say with Baldwin, just thinking about the end of his life, he didn't find that eternal partner. He didn't feel loved, and he was a lonely. And what's that? Well, actually, though, this is what I want to say is when he died, he was surrounded by people. I mean, he had, including the man he really did love, with that sense of, yes. So I do feel for Baldwin that while there wasn't that long-term partner, and he did struggle romantically, and there, I think, was a constant negotiation with the messages he had internalized from a young age. I think he was very present with that. He did have people. He did. I do feel that. And his last work, which was never completed, was called The Welcome Table. And the scenes from his death are this table and the friends, people who had been with him for decades. So I do feel like it was a both and for him.
The relationship sustained him. With Maya Angelou, with, everyone, Dr. King, Malcolm X, he was like their big brother, You know, he took that seriously.
He was a good mentor.
He was,
yes.
you know, to their kids, you know, like he was like the godfather to all of these kids, the children of the revolution, the Black movement, you know, civil rights movement. So he held that position. I think that gave him a lot of encouragement and inspiration to do that. But again, like I think the deep hurt was not finding that love reciprocated, right? And I think a lot of, you know, and I include myself in this, a lot of Black queer writers, thinkers, activists, we see so much of our activism as rooted in a real kind of erotic and romantic love in honor of and on behalf of so many who came before us who didn't have access to that love. Like Audre Lorde had that, you know, and I think that influenced how they rose and how they thought and how they found home in the world. You know. One last question? I know we're a little over time. I always go over time, by the way. Don't have me facilitating anything. I start late, you know. But if I'm on top of it, I always end early. But one last question before we kind of wrap up. And Rima will be offering books, signing books.
Yeah,
you know,
stick
so
around.
Please buy the book. Any last question? So don't go up to Rima and be asking her questions. I know how this works. It's like, no, I'm going to save my question. One more call. Okay. Anything online?
Nope. No other questions online.
Okay. All right. You know.
Yeah, we're past time.
We're past time. I know. I'm gonna stop fishing for questions. You know? I'm trying to help you out, though. But I just want to say, just offer again deep appreciation to Rima for this labor, for bringing this work into the world. I know you were teaching this course.
Yes,
different
I have
places.
taught it a few times.
So I have heard from people in your courses, you know, past couple of years, their experience before I received the text, you know. So I know it was already touching people. So thank you so much for offering this work. This is going to be a huge resource for our community and our practice, right? And it's just deep gratitude to Charis as well for the tradition you've held for decades in Atlanta. Of course, Charis is a big part of radical Dharma history as well. Charis was our first dialogue that we had as we were creating and writing the book. So deep gratitude for taking a chance. Well, actually the second. It was the second. We did 2 back-to-back in Atlanta in 2015. So deep appreciation to this community, deep appreciation to all of you, and as well as everyone online for joining us. And may we be blessed. And may this dialogue, this writing, this labor be a blessing to you. And may we take this blessing out into the world right now. May we remember that it is our right to be free, right? And I would like to call in Asada Shakur as well. Like it is our duty to love and protect each other. We must fight and we must win.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
That's right. Right. So let's be inspired, you know, let's go out and continue this work. You know, let's continue resisting and loving and caring for each other. And we'll get through this.
Yeah.
You know, we will. No choice. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I suck at promoting myself as well. But no, I will be having a one-day retreat here in Atlanta in Grant Park on the 14th, Valentine's Day, as we bring in the Fire Horse Year. So we will be practicing radical acts and practices of love, revolutionary love, and we're going to be setting fires in our ceremonies and bringing in the transformative period. Yes, that's right.
Another Lama Rod promotion, which is that chapter 1, the chapter on Gaza, ends with a practice from one of Lama Rod's books, from the New Saints, and it is a fire practice.
Fire ceremony practice, which we will be doing on the 14th as well. So just join us. You can visit my website, lamarod.com as well, and we will continue to promote this text in our community as well.
Thank you.
So when's the next one coming out?
Palestinian Dharma.
Oh, that's it? You really?
There are 2 projects, one on race and caste and one on Palestinian Dharma.
Oh, goodness. All right. All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.